Hello, my name is Melanie Gow, and I'm actually an ordinary mother who went out for a walk one day with her two sons, aged 12 and 16. For 33 days, we walked over the Pyrenees and across Spain for 800 kilometers to Santiago de Compostela. I don't know if you've ever really wanted to do something, with no rational explanation, no reason. Well, this was it for us. We just had to do it. So we just gave up, and we went out and we walked our talk. After all, how hard could it be? Our first dawn crept in on this really gentle mist that hid a ferocious heart. Oh, the hills are alive with the sound of neighing horses and the cowbells clinking as they happily graze, and the sheep are scattered across the hills like woolly rocks. It is all undeniably beautiful. But what that blazing sun and that blue sky don't show is a wind that birds couldn't take off into, that whipped the air out of your breath. And the hills rolled ahead with this seasick relentlessness. My 16-year-old, Ben, threw up for 5 hours. He couldn't even keep water down. Frustrated with the stop-start, my 12-year-old, Harry, left us. I couldn't hold Harry back, and I couldn't leave Ben. I took his backpack and I watched him sit down and cry because he couldn't carry on, knowing he had no choice. We were in the middle of nowhere. It was as far to go back into France as it was to go on into Spain, and we hadn't spoken to anyone in English since we set out. I stood right here and thought, what kind of mother doesn't pack glucose tablets? A few minutes later, a man walked up to us and asked if Ben was okay, in a perfect Cambridge accent. He then said, I don't know if they'll help, but I have a packet of Lucozade tablets if you want them. In that moment, I knew that every day was going to be like this. And we had 776 kilometers to go. I walked for 33 days with blisters. I got up at 4 o'clock every morning and sewed them. You leave a thread in so that the fluid drains out as you walk. We got up before dawn to walk 25 kilometers or more every day to beat the midday heat. At the beginning, when people ask, are you going to Santiago? You go, yes. By day 5, you say, I hope. Every day, the walk is long and tiring through these vast landscapes. Of course, some of them are staggeringly beautiful, but others are uninspiring, like cement factories and industrial outskirts. And remote villages don't have very many amenities. Comfort is not readily available. In some ways you get stronger, but in others you are worn down. The food is inadequate. The water can make you sick. Toilet breaks in the middle of nowhere are a bit of a challenge. Your accommodation can be basic. It's bunk beds with plastic mattresses, 50 people sharing an outside sink and a shower, which can be cold, short, and communal. And you're not guaranteed a place to sleep. Your traveling companions come in all shapes and sizes, and sleep deprivation comes with the territory. And the funny thing is, you don't have to do this. So you have to choose to walk every single day. But if you do, you walk in the very best show that nature can put on. In dawns where the landscape lies like an undefined idea waiting to be colored in with a little more thought later. You go through woods with bright blue trees, to rolling red hills, to golden fields and patterned skies. Nature is written in the detail, from tunnels of light and knotted drama to minimalist landscapes. to 360-degree ocean blue skies at midday, to these deep, rich, velvet evenings that cool down into nights with glittering stars, as you can imagine. And when you walk into the end of your day, you go from these towering trees and against these pastel skies to intricate frescoes 10 meters high in the most articulate architecture. And as you walk into the town, you know that these are not our secular buildings. This is not the office, or the gym, or the shopping mall. And when you have stepped into a space that was designed by Gaudi at organ practice time, or you have stood under these arches and the sweetest music has cascaded down and you are bathed in the light of that rose window, or when you have stared into the eye above a 50-kilo Botafumerio which is swinging 21 meters above you, the redemptive power of art stares right back down at you. And the very best of our creativity and our spirituality is concentrated in this overwhelmingly small step through a door. And you see the very best of human nature. And when you get to the end of the day, it comes down to what really matters. You need to wash your clothes in time to dry them for the next day. You need something to eat, maybe a little wine, in the fellowship of really, really good people. And you need a bed. That is all that really matters. I am going to tell you the story of one day that will hopefully give you a sense of the experience. We were leaving Burgos at 5 a.m. and Burgos is this really big, robust city, the sort of place that gave birth to El Cid. And for 5 perfect moments, we were eating the best tasting ham and cheese pasty we have ever had. And it was fresh and it was hot, straight from the baker's tray, and we were on a cold, dewy bench under a street lamp. And then for the next nearly 3 hours, we had to walk beyond the grip of the city, under overpasses, and through these tunnels of graffiti, and we walked along train tracks and the electricity cables overhead. The infrastructure that fuels a city creates this fetidness that sits on you like a pall. We were in really bad moods, and we were bickering. We had to wear a cloth across our face for the smell, and you cannot walk fast enough to get beyond a smell. And I had a really bad headache. But then suddenly, we crossed a bridge, and there was a patch of sunflowers on the side, and the path turned this soft white. It was like we had passed beyond this urban dome. And within minutes, this is where we found ourselves. Now, there is no way that you can tell what it has taken to get here. And from here, you have no idea what is round the corner. We were facing 6 days on the Mesetas. This is a legendary plateau in the heart of peninsular Spain. It's 240 kilometers of this. Dry wheat fields, with the occasional town. No shade, no breeze, just arid, endless path. It is extraordinary to face nothing. Our thoughts had all the silence in the world to crowd into our heads, and they did. For hours and hours, but eventually you can even let them go. And a lasting peace is found inside. You can feel your core getting stronger, and you feel lighter. And at the end of the day, when all the silly games are played, and you walk into the town, and the dogs stop barking and chasing their tails, and they lie down, the evening stretches out, and it reaches down inside you, and it opens up this space in which you can hear the earth whisper. Every cell in your body, every thought in your mind is concentrated, it's moved, it is engaged. I knew these birds were going to fly before they did. I had all the time in the world to get my camera out. 2 days later, everything changed. This unremarkable scene is taken about 6 kilometers outside a town called Carrion de la Condas. We stopped for a break. I felt like I had been walking since the 13th century. I was really grateful for a drink. But when we got back up again, this searing pain made me sit right back down again as my knee gave out. Temporarily, you'll be glad to know, but profoundly. Now, I don't know if you can make it out, but there was an A board just there in the bottom corner next to our table, and it had a taxi number on it. And Harry looked at me sideways, and he said, "Maybe it's a sign, Mum." Right, what are you going to do with that? So, I agreed. We'd take a taxi. My sons turned to me and said, "No, you're taking a taxi. We're walking." That was the last time I saw my boys. The next time I saw them, they were men. Some significant moments are so small you barely notice them, and nothing prepares you for seeing your children grow up before your eyes, knowing you will never be the same again. And you know what? We met up that night at a monastery with singing nuns. And when they were done, the guys went out to sit by a bar in the sun, and they called my sons over, and they had their first boys' night out with the very best men who treated them as equals. Now, you don't get your first boys' night out again. So I left them to the banter and to the sangria they were being bought, and I went to the church because I'd heard it was worth looking at. Well, the funny thing is it turned out to be the feast day of the Assumption, which is a service that celebrates Mary, the mother of Christ. And the priest gave a sermon about the importance of being a mother, of the grace of the relationship between a mother and child. Now, this sermon on this day was a very powerful coincidence. By the time that very sweet nun got up to accompany herself on her acoustic guitar and was singing a song called "Everything Changes Except Love," I cried. Then she started handing out these little paper stars that the sisters had cut out and colored in and prayed over. And she gave this speech about hope, and I was lost. I cried for about 3 days. At Pride, for my sons, with joy, with gratitude, at coming home to myself. And this was the dawn the next day. Some moments are so vast, they burn a new color in the sky, and the air smells really different. Now, the funny thing about a long walk is that you end up on a pilgrimage, whether you wanted to go on one or not. Any time that you can give yourself in which transformation can take place, it is inevitable you will find new insights and discover old ones you'd forgotten about. It's not about rest or recreation, it's about a challenge to your life. And every day you are moved, challenged, inspired, humbled that you choose to walk. You find a new understanding and a trust in your body. Your acuity expands. Of course, you recalibrate what is really important in life, and you redefine your spirituality. And every dawn asks you, what are you going to do with this one glorious day? I'm going to tell you one last story. I met a man, a handsome man from Barcelona, who found me amusing. He was shaped by the cynicism of the world. He didn't really believe in possibility. He was a little cautious about sincerity. And he asked me to explain to him why I had cried. Endearingly, when I'd finished telling him, he said, "I hope to have such a moment." He was supposed to leave after 5 days, but he didn't. He stayed on the road. And I met him again in this church. It's at the top of the highest peak before you descend into Santiago. And right there, I said to him, "Have you had your moment?" And he said, "No, I am dry." Well, I'm British, so I don't know how to handle open honesty like that. So I said, "Interesting." To which he said, "No, not interesting. I think it's sad." Well, his yearning created this really special place in my heart. And he arrived in Santiago on the very same day that we did. I'd just got my certificate of completion, which, by the way, is the very best certificate I have ever earned. And I was coming down the stairs of the pilgrim's office, and I saw him right there. And I stepped up to him. And it was all there between us. And he burst into tears. We hugged for the longest time, and I think that small story tells you the big picture, perhaps. It is a pilgrimage to yourself. It was my gift to my sons. I wanted them to have a space in which to decide what kind of men they wanted to be. And it was the best thing I could do for them. It was the best thing I could do with them. The surprise was the thoroughly profound overhaul that I experienced. And of course, it is just the beginning. My question is, imagine what could change if you just walk the talk. Because nothing will ever be the same again. Thank you.